Well, it surely has been a great number of time that has passed. But there is an update to Don't Starve, currently in beta, that has some juicy. It is, oh my goodness, it has some good things, and that's what I'm here to talk about. First and foremost, this is not going to be a comprehensive guide or overview of what the update added. That is not what this video is going to be. There are other videos you can go to for that. This is going to be me, Mr. Lore Fanboy, absolutely gushing and rambling about what is happening in this update. Alrighty, so first on the agenda is the Ancient Archive. So, the Ancient Archive is a location that predates the other ancient areas we're aware of, even the Atrium. This is kind of a historical collection of knowledge and whatever else of when the ancients used to worship the moon. Now, we don't really know the exact reason why the ancients wound up going underground in the first place, but I do believe this is quite literally what moved them away from the moon. The moon's influence couldn't reach into the caves. The ancients were now distanced from their object of worship, their power source, their whatever else. It's only natural that their civilization would progress in a different direction. And it just so happened they were now closer to this other power source, this dark energy. And I've never really brought it up before, but the fact is the lunar fissures mirror the nightmare fissures that we see underground. And so, if the moon, like the astral body, the moon, is actually this lunar entity, is the constant, the place we are living on, essentially the nightmare entity? Are we on it? And is it even a case of the astral bodies themselves being these entities, or are these entities trapped within these planets, essentially? And so the closer you get to the core, the more powerful you can feel and experience this energy. If that's the case, then what did we see inside the ancient gateway, that eye that's depicted in the mural? Did the ancients kind of let this thing out, or at least let it out partially, and that's why there's this nightmare influence going on in the underground? But why does it seem that this stuff originates from the core? The obelisks grow out of the ground, and then it creates those fissures which have the light pouring out. What is it about even deeper down below that's so nightmare-y? So here's the thing, and it's kind of been on my mind for a while, is how literal is Return of them, and have they already returned? What I mean is essentially, are we waiting on something to arrive? Like something is actually going to come to us? If that's the case, the moon piece has kind of already done that. It's also brought with it returned knowledge and magic, power, whatever, that has kind of been lost. That has returned, But I don't think the lunar entity is them. It seems to go against everything we've kind of known already. However, with the lunar entity kind of returning and being relevant, there's also caused a disruption with the shadow stuff. The shadow war that's caused by turning on the archive causes the obelisks to grow out of the ground and create more of these nightmare fissures. So, what I'm thinking is essentially, I think these dormant powers, the lunar entity and the shadow entity, are what are returning. They are them, right? It's literally plural. There are multiple. These sort of old god-like eldritch beings are having to reawaken because they are each other's biggest threat, and they're being placed right in front of one another by Charlie. And Charlie's plan is so interesting, because when we got the Atrium, Maxwell was so confident, right? He was like, oh, I know why you led me here. What you're planning isn't gonna work. But now that the archive has been revealed, we know that Maxwell doesn't know of the archive. He's like, whoa, this has been hidden from me. What is this? I'm not aware of this. And now he's like asking, Charlie, what are you planning? These are literally in his quotes. It's such a direct, interesting parallel because he went from, ah, yes, I know what you're doing, it's not going to work, to, wait, what are you doing? And now we have a kind of endgame goal in the form of a new portal, which, based on quotes, seems to be a potential way home. Wartox is like, I don't really know if I want to get their hopes up, and Maxwell's like, wait, is this what I think it is? It seems to be alluding to the fact that this may be a way home. Now, another big point of interest would be the dust moths themselves, because they are confirmed to be the source of thulecite. That is correct. There is no spooky dead body matter being used. It's just a moth creating rock, essentially. It's really funny because Maxwell's quote is like, this is underwhelming. And I feel like they added that like just for us crazy theorists that were just getting way outlandish. But I'm not too surprised. There were definitely holes in that theory. Ultimately, I expected at least something a little more than just this. This is a rather safe play by Klei, but I'll take it. At least we're getting answers, and I think that's the most important part. And the dust moths are adorable. With that being addressed, I do still believe that the Atrium statues are still corpses of the ancients. It's just that they're not made of thulecite. They're just made of bug innards. Because as the rest of the theory goes, they shed their bodies and then they became the nightmare creatures, particularly terrorbeaks. And that's something I want to mention is we kind of connected terrorbeaks to the ancients based on how they look. Makes sense. But there's always been the case of the crawling horror, which, never really had a creature counterpart that even resembled it in the slightest. Now, I think it's a little bit of a jump, but the dust moths do look at least somewhat like the shape of the crawling horror.
Oh hey, it's me from the future. Just wanted to pop in and say they do not look as similar as I initially thought they were. Obviously, shadow transformation, things change a little bit, but this is a really big stretch, even more of a stretch than I thought. I already thought it was a stretch, but this is gonna snap. Anyway, I'll show those pictures still, just so you can compare them, but yeah, not nearly as possible as I was imagining.
I'm not going to go make any claims or anything as much as I do say that, yes, the ancients are the terrorbeaks. That I believe pretty wholeheartedly. This one is more of just an offshoot. They share a similar kind of silhouette, if anything. So, it's worth thinking about. Now, before we hop off the ancient lore, let's talk about the centipedes. So we got some robot centipedes that we see in the archive, which are really annoying, but they seem to be based off of the centipedes that we see depicted in the murals. So this is something that a few of us have been wondering about if we'd ever see them. It does beg the question of what happened to them. Perhaps they got killed off or turned into shadows themselves. That would be actually really cool to see a new shadow creature that's like a centipede. That would be pretty cool. I don't know, but we don't see any living variants of them, just these robots, which are presumably designed after them. And of course, these robots are defending the knowledge in this archive. Now, I'm gonna be a little honest here, I'm a little underwhelmed by the 3 recipes that you can learn. One of them is the means of cooking up ambrosia, which is what you give to the dust moths to create thulecite fragments. Cool, but I don't know how useful that is. I mean, I guess it's a decent alternative to just resetting the ruins. Okay. The other one is the terraformer. Super cool in a base building standpoint. Not really useful in other means. It's aesthetic. And then the last one, which is going to be kind of the key point, is the resonator, which is used to locate 2 more pieces to yet another lunar altar. So currently, at least in the non-beta, we have 2 lunar altars that we can build. One of them takes 3 pieces, and it's just from mining the boulders on the lunar island. The other one is gotten from killing the Crab King with Pearl's Pearl, and that's a singular piece one. And now we have this new one. And when you place all 3 of them in close proximity, it will, I don't know if it's generating, summoning, creating, calling, I don't know exactly, but the mysterious energy forms in the center, I think, of them. I don't know how you can line them up exactly, but it looks cool. Um, and this has construction tape on it, and construction tape is a big sign because the last thing that had construction tape was the gateway, and that was a big deal. So ultimately, no matter what this turns out to be, it's going to be the end game due to the amount of hoops you have to jump through just to actually reach this point. But the amount of parallels to the kind of journey you do for the Fuel Weaver is quite substantial, and that's kind of what I wanted to point out. It's kind of obvious in that sense, but obviously the Atrium is meant to be kind of the shadowy, ancient, secluded area, whereas the Archive is meant to be the lunar, secluded, ancient area. But there are more parallels than just that, right? Each one has a portal, you know. For the Fuel Weaver, you need to kill a boss, right? You gotta kill the Ancient Guardian to get the key. For this, you gotta kill Crab King to get one of the lunar pillars. You got to do a sort of not too bad mining task, you know, digging up one of the altars or digging up fossils. You also gotta do a kind of combat encounter thing to get another piece, so you gotta either do the lunar, whatever you call it, to get the opal, or you do the Shadow Atrium fight in the Shadow chess pieces. You know, there's a lot of parallels as far as the little journey to get to this point. And that makes sense because, you know, the lunar magic and the shadow magic are meant to kind of be opposites, but also kind of parallels because they're not necessarily good versus evil. It's kind of like evil versus worse evil because one evil doesn't really affect us too much, whereas the other evil turns us into spooky shadow people. I would say it's probably a safe bet to say the mysterious energy is going to lead up to a boss fight, you know? This is the kind of thing, in the same way with Fuel Weaver, that leads up to like a grand final. And a grand final that isn't a boss fight would be interesting to see what they would try to do, but I don't really see that happening, but I'm okay with being surprised. And the main reason I bring up, you know, the amount of parallels is because I'm trying to predict what they're going to do next. Now, the mysterious energy is very non hinting at anything, really. So it's really just grasping at straws here. But I just wanted to point out that the Fuel Weaver, according to me, is believed to be the ancient staff wielder. So on the mural, we see the guy who kind of led his people into ruin. I believe that to be the Fuel Weaver, at least in mind. His body is that of an ancient demon that predates even the ancients. Let's not even get into that. The body doesn't match the mind. The mind is an ancient. According to his quotes, kind of seems to allude to that. So, if we're talking parallels, what makes the most sense to me is we'll end up seeing the other one. That is to say, the Torchbearer, the one who seemed to still utilize some of that white energy that we presume to be the lunar magic. Now, if this is the direction it's going to be going, I don't know how identical it will be. You know, maybe it's just another case of placing down the odd skeleton, having the mysterious energy float into it, and we get another variant that, you know, is a different mind, so it says different things. You know, the fight will be different because it'll be lunar themed, you know. The boss would look kind of the same, which is not really, I'm not super fond of that, so I kind of hope this isn't the direction they're taking it. I do hope, though, that we do end up getting to see this Torchbearer, the other side of the coin we've already seen. I think that would just be really interesting thematically. I don't know where it'll take the story, but it would definitely fit the kind of parallels that are going on. With that said, as kind of touched on earlier, I don't really want to see another odd skeleton form. I would just like it, you know, it can be the mind of this ancient as long as it's like a different looking boss fight. In my opinion, you know, ultimately, maybe it's going to be a completely different direction than this. I would actually welcome that. I think the unexpected is a lot more enjoyable in some cases as long as it's not a moth. So I'm pretty sure I've gone over everything I wanted to talk about. There's a lot of other awesome things in this update, such as, you know, the actual grotto itself before the archive, the sort of shadow war that goes on. I briefly touched on that. but there's a ton of awesome content. So if you're looking for the actual like gameplay information, be sure to check out some other videos by some other people. Tons of awesome content out there by other Don't Starve content creators. But this is just kind of my initial impressions, my gushing over lore and whatnot, because I'm super hyped. I'm not sure if we're going to get a rework in between the Hollow Knights and the next, presumably final update, but we're getting into some very, very hype areas. So as always, I absolutely want to hear what you guys have to say. So go down in the comments below and just tell me your thoughts on this update, or the story lore as a whole, your own ideas, your own lore. I love hearing those things. Absolutely okay to disagree with me and think I'm stupid. Totally fine. I've absolutely made some bizarre claims before, so no harm. Just be kind of polite to everyone, as always. And if you enjoyed, you can like the video, I suppose. If it's not exactly one of my best videos, but like, hey, if you liked it, go for it. And subscribe. I post videos like yearly, apparently. Sorry about that. I just thought, hey, October might as well come back. Revival. Spooky, undead. Yeah, dead YouTubers coming back to life. Haha, funny. Anyway, I'm super hyped to see where things are going. Hope you guys are too. And as always, wait, I feel like I was just doing someone else's outro there. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in, and farewell.